I think we should. It's what, 4 after. Okay, let's get started. I want to thank everybody for joining us today and remind you that we've been conducting some communications related trainings this year, about one a month, and they are all in our brand toolkit for Cabner um, online. So for those who don't attend this, you can tell your colleagues it will be online after we make it accessible. We have to go and make it accessible afterwards. So anyway, thank you for joining us. This is a really, really good presentation that John Cushman and Jennifer Kent have put together. John, of course, is with our college, and Jen is with the School of Journalism. So I want to thank them both for doing this for us, and I'm going to turn it over to John.
All right. Well, thank you, Claudine, and thank you for the invitation to present today. We're really excited to share some of the work that we've been doing in this arena of scientific communication. And let me hide that. All right. Can everyone see that okay?
Yeah.
All right. So we are, as scientists, we're all familiar with publishing papers, going to scientific meetings, publishing meeting proceedings, sharing our information with our scientific colleagues. And we're well versed in doing that, writing scientific papers or extension bulletins and sharing our information that way. But what I realized several years ago is that we really, as scientists, are not doing as good a job as we can to communicate with the public. And so the way scientists think about information and the way the public thinks about information are two very different things. And so this little graphic here, I think, is perfect because what we're saying and what the public might be hearing are two different things. And so several years ago, I developed this class with the College of the School of Journalism. And the most recent iteration, Jennifer taught this course. We taught this course together. And what this came out of was a broader impact goal of an NSF grant that I had back in 2021. And this is an undergraduate, graduate level course called the Scientific Communication Masterclass. And this targets all science majors and journalism majors, although the journalism majors, they tend to get the journalism work in this arena already. So it's really our target audience has been the scientists. And that has been reflected in the course attendees by the students. Most of the students have been science majors, which is exactly our intention here. And so the big point is that science is not finished until it is communicated. This is a famous quote from a U.S. government chief scientific advisor, Mark Walport. And this is something that as scientists, we all really need to take to heart. And so one of the goals of scientific communication is to inform, educate, and raise the awareness of science-related topics for the public and increase the sense of wonder about scientific discoveries and arguments. And with that, we would hopefully improve the engagement of the public with science. And so you all probably recognize this very famous scientific communicator, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he is an astronomer in Philadelphia, and he does a wonderful job of exciting the public about astronomical discoveries. And so I think he is a prime example of what I think all scientists should strive to become. And the other major goal of scientific communication is to help the public understand and assess how scientific information applies to a particular issue or situation. And one of the main topics that we focus on in the course is this concept of the science of climate change and how, for example, methane is contributing to that. And this is a very complex subject, but we use a lot of examples in the course for helping understand these very complex topics. But the students aren't limited to just the climate crisis as subject material. They can choose any material they want, and most of them choose topics related to their research. So the other important thing about scientific communication is that we need to think about how can we distill down information about technical information about science-related topics so that it's understandable to the public, and we want to convey this as messages and stories. So this is a cute little TikTok video, if I can get it to play, about vaccination.
You need to make this. What is it? It's a part of a virus. A virus? Just a part of it, not the actual virus. They're called COVID-19. They have 4 cans and they're coming. 4 cans? Please. What is this? This messenger told me to make them. I've never seen these before. I'll make some new antibodies to get rid of them. Seize the forks. Nice body. Gonna make this place my new home. 4 cats. Seize them.
So it's really cute and engaging, and makes you kind of chuckle, but it conveys some information, scientific information, to the public that would otherwise be difficult to communicate. So go ahead and move on. And so, speaking of communication, we as scientists generally don't do a very good job. In fact, most of us do a poor job of communicating our scientific results to the public. And I love this cartoon here, basically saying that this old woman is asking, what time is it? And the scientist goes into this very convoluted explanation, and that's not helping anybody, because then the conclusion is, what? You don't know what time it is? So that's a really great example. So as scientists, we should consider scientific communication as a regular part of our job. And that is one of the main take-home messages that we want to convey today. And the reason for this is that we as scientists, as educational institutions, scientific organizations, think tanks, NGOs, we should be thinking strategically about how we communicate our science. And the reason for this is that the general public faces an infodemic. We have this onslaught of material, of information that is not really understood and not easily digested. And so we need to create fact-based messages that are going to break through this massive infodemic that public faces currently. And to make matters worse, all scientific information or all information is not fact-based. So there is misinformation, which is misleading or false and is spread without intent to harm or deceive. And then there's disinformation, which is also false, but is actually spread with the intent to harm or deceive. And then finally, the worst case scenario is we have malinformation, information that's based on reality, but it's deliberately manipulated to cause harm and to mislead the public. And an example of this is a paper that was published back in 1998 by Andrew Wakefield, and it was basically faulty research that linked MMR vaccines to autism. And this is a topic that's been in the news quite recently. Even though this study was retracted because it was found to be not scientifically sound or valid, this was picked up by the media, reported widely, and this has ever since created this breach in the public's trust of scientific information. And this has led to vaccine hesitancy and reduction in vaccination rates. And the outcome of this is that there have been measles outbreaks because of this vaccine hesitancy throughout the United States, Canada, Australia, and many other places throughout the world. So that just gives you an idea of how serious misinformation can be. Here's another example of Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos. She ultimately ended up being put in jail and remains there to this day for fraud because of the misinformation that she was giving to investors. And that was considered a criminal act. And so the claims that she was making were revealed to be inaccurate and fraudulent. And so we have to be really careful about making sure that the information that we convey is not fraudulent. It is indeed fact-based. So the dilemma that we're faced with as scientists is that science, we have to improve our communication skills, and the public has to improve their scientific literature, and we have to meet somewhere in the middle through this large arena of science communicators. And we can improve or bridge this gap by improving scientific literacy. And the things that we are faced with as scientists are things like using jargon, being overly detailed or specific, and facing the consequences of any echo chamber effects that might come out of the scientific, hopefully fact-based information that we're conveying that might lead to misinformation or malinformation. And in the public faces this misinformation, pseudoscience, and the infodemic that we mentioned earlier. But scientists, let me try to put this into context of what we're up against as scientists in terms of the realm of public relations. So this is a little bar graph showing you who is trusted. And business, it turns out, is highly trusted. And this is comes from an organization called Edelman, which is a global communication firm. And it basically likes to, their job is to inform businesses and organizations to protect their brand and reputations. And why business is so trusted is that they invest heavily in public relations. And they outnumber journalists by a 6-to-1 ratio. Now, the good news is that scientists and teachers are very trusted, according to Edelman. And this is really should work to our advantage when we're talking with the public. By contrast, government leaders, not so much. They're not very well trusted at all. And I think part of these results, this trust, is that we as scientists and teachers are very wedded to the idea of fact-based reporting. So how do we communicate science effectively? Well, the main avenue of doing this is known as storytelling. And the famous quote here from Tom Brokaw is that it's all storytelling, that's what journalism is all about. So we as scientists, we want to try to be compelling and provide personal narratives that will drive the acceptance of our scientific information and embed those in the memory of the public. The storytelling can help us understand different perspectives and puts issues in a context, mainly an emotional or a human context. And tapping into emotions to bolster facts is an important concept here. So as scientists, we're bound by facts, but it would be, of course, unethical and dangerous if we strayed from those facts when we address the public. But we convey our facts, but if that's all we convey, it's not necessarily going to be enough to engage a wider audience. So we should not separate facts from emotion, but we should try to tap into emotion to bolster scientific facts. So how do we do this? Well, The concept of the narrative cognition is thought to represent the default mode of human thought, providing structure to reality and serving as an underlying foundation for memory. And basically, this is narratives and storytelling. So the audience is going to be more willing to accept normative evaluations from narratives than more logical, scientific-based arguments. And these narratives are trusted so much that individuals rarely allow evidence to contradict the narrative. So the narrative or the stories is what becomes more important, and evidence is altered to fit their narratives because of that trust. And so we want to think about how we can engage in storytelling and narratives. And we are trained to present our information in a particular way. So as scientists, when we're presenting a paper, we go through background, methods, results. But journalism and storytelling flips this approach on its head to inform non-scientists. So they start with the results. They ask the question of so what, why it's important. Once that's established, then you can go into the deeper background details. So you can see that this method is completely on its head, flipped on its head from the way that scientists are used to presenting information. And so here's a scientific paper. The structure is title, abstract, background, methods, results, discussion, conclusion. But journalists rely on something called the nonlinear message box to create a newsworthy story. So you start with addressing the issue, the problems that might be associated with that issue, why, so what, why is it important, conveying solutions and benefits to that particular problem or issue. And the other thing that's important is that we, as scientists, we want to convey, we want to reach an audience, and journalists want to really reach everyone. But as scientists, we may not have that opportunity. So we want to engage in a broad audience. But in order to do that, we have to understand who our audience is. And so when we're thinking about our messaging, we want to think about who we're addressing. Is it policymakers? Is it business managers? Is it non-government organizations, other scientists, the news media, foundations, or concerned citizens? And with that, I will stop sharing, and I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer. And let me go ahead and stop sharing. And Jennifer is going to tell us more about how we can communicate with the general public.
All right, y'all seeing this okay?
Yeah.
All right, so now you should have a few tips for synthesizing your science into a narrative that can connect with the public. That message box tool that John threw up is a really helpful exercise to go through. So note that for sure and look it up later, and you can kind of go through that practice. What I wanted to talk to you about is once you have a narrative, once you have a story about your science that you want to share with the public, how do you get it out there, right? How do you get it out into the media landscape? Where do you fit in? So the first thing we're going to do is try and get a feel for the media landscape. What world are you entering, right? Let me see if I can. So here's you're a scientist, you're trying to connect with the public. We're going to start with marketing. So this is marketing and communications. This is essentially what you're doing. You are trying to promote your science with the public. So marketing is the intentional act of promoting a product, a service, or idea through strategic messaging, essentially telling someone what to think, do, or buy. Under marketing, there are several branches. So this is representative of advertising, and advertising is traditionally what we think of when we think of marketing, right? So an advertisement can be anything from a commercial on TV to a print ad in a magazine. What we're probably more used to seeing today are paid advertisements on the internet, on social media, that sort of thing. And then here we've got our public understanding of a product, service, or person. So this is the branch of marketing we're talking about here is branding and brand marketing. Um, so what folks typically think of when you think of branding is the visual brand, right? So maybe you're thinking of like logos are coming to mind. That's part of it, but perhaps a bigger part of brand marketing is uh, the management of the idea or image people have in their minds when they think of a company or a person. You can absolutely have personal branding. Can anyone think of a company that has a really strong brand? I'll throw a few out there if no one wants to jump in, but you can think of like the Nike swoosh might be a really strong visual brand. I always like to bring up Patagonia. I think it has incredible branding. Their brand is tied to environmental sustainability and saving our home planet. And it's a company that sells clothes, right? So often branding, the characteristics that identify branding are not in fact tied to the product that is being sold. And then here we've got public relations. So public relations is the maintenance of the public image of a company or organization or a person. People often think of public relations in terms of crisis communications, so the PR officer comes in when something goes wrong and they smooth things over with some smooth talking. But really, public relations is the day-to-day management of a brand. This is what Claudine Wharton is doing. This is what the communications officers at the university are doing. If you've worked with any of them, they are managing the university brand. They are trying to put out messaging and a visual identity and a story that matches the characteristic of the brand of the university, right? So this is directed at both the public and at the media. Often communications officers work with the media. And then we're going to jump completely out of marketing and into journalism. So journalism, as scientists, you might think of journalism as kind of the peer review of marketing and communications. Journalism should be accurate and fair. It should be free from bias. One of the key characteristics of journalism, as opposed to stories that come out of marketing or public relations, is that it includes multiple sources and presents alternative views in an attempt to maintain objectivity. Often, in a newsroom, a marketing office often holds a completely separate physical space as well. They want to separate themselves as much as possible from the journalists. So journalists might be on, one floor of the New York Times building, and the marketing office will be on the other. So the journalists and marketing will be separate. So here's, an example of a Wall Street Journal article where you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sources. These are 7 people quoted with alternative views on this subject. And this is, these are just the human sources that were used in this story in an attempt to present a broad and unbiased perspective on this story. So we've got this pretty wild media landscape, but not too crazy, right? We've got marketing, we've got branding. Under that, we've got branding, advertising, public relations, and then we've got journalism. Easy peasy. Unfortunately, that is not the way things work. We have this media landscape that is incredibly confusing. Marketing looks like journalism. Journalism sometimes is more like marketing. There's advertisements that are bombarding us. We have social media, which is its own whole other, kind of space that we exist in. And here you are trying to get your message out there. So it's really a convoluted space to enter, and the more you can understand it, the more you're going to be empowered to enter in the right space, or to not get confused yourself as to where you fit in. So I wanted to try something out here, and hopefully you'll participate. If not, I'll just tell you the answers, and that's okay. But here we've got a documentary film, a film about saving wild salmon, right? So where would this fall in? What would you guys call this? I gave you a big hint earlier. So this is really strong brand marketing, right? It feels a lot like journalism. And maybe if you didn't stumble on it on the Patagonia website and you just started watching this film, on YouTube or someone posted it on social media, it would feel very much like journalism, right? There's going to be interviews and it's going to follow, it's a documentary film about this subject. And yet it is a Patagonia film. It is trying to, it is aligning with their motto, which is we're in the business to save our home planet. This is a lot of what Patagonia does. Like all of their marketing really rarely shows the clothing, right? But probably most of the people that are on the good side of this story from their perspective are wearing Patagonia clothes. All right, so what have we got here? Any guesses? What this is? So usually when I show this in class, even my journalism students will guess that this is journalism. This is in fact advertising. So this is paid for by the Marriott. If you read through this story, which, is going to kind of come across as this, beautiful narrative about travel, I can promise you Hilton will not be mentioned anywhere in here. This person will not have stayed at an Airbnb, right? So this is advertising. And it's, just shows how confusing this can really be. Okay, what about this? This is something we all recognize, right? Nevada Today stories. This is a story about Dr. Cushman's work. Any guesses here? If you're thinking it in your mind, that's okay too. So this is public relations. So Nevada Today is the university's news source where our communications professionals can write about the work happening at the university and put it out there for the world as a way to manage the university brand and showcase the university, right? These are essentially press releases, if you know what those are. Many of the stories on Nevada Today get sent out as press releases directly to journalists in an attempt to get them to write about our work. So if you read a Nevada Today article, it's very likely going to, only have scientists or researchers or folks from the university quoted. It is going to really highlight the university and the successes of the university. We're not going to be, splitting the story and say, like, let's get the alternative perspective from, University of Washington faculty who are also studying this and say something different, right? That's not going to be in these articles. But you could expect that if a journalist picks it up. So here's an example of a Nevada Today story being picked up by the Tahoe Daily Tribune. So this was sent out as a press release to journalists. But what's unique here is this story was printed verbatim in the Tribune, and you can kind of see this little submitted to the Tribune. So this is kind of like a first level win for a comms professional, and also just something to be aware of that does happen. So even if you're on a news site, you might be reading public relations content, so essentially marketing content, right? So that little key submitted to the Tribune means that a journalist didn't write this. This was something that was submitted by the university. This is the kind of next level of win that you really want to get. So this is called earned media, where this press release was sent out and then a journalist either gets it in their inbox or they stumble on it on Nevada Today and they say, that's really interesting. I want to write my own story or publish my own story about this research. They reach out to John or to the comms professional, set up an interview, and do their own story. And this is where you can get, there might be others interviewed for the story. They might have a different angle than what was shared in the Nevada Today story. But this is really great. And this is helping to establish Dr. Cushman as an expert in this field. You're seeing him on Nevada Today. You're seeing him in the local news media. And then the big goal, what university comms professionals want, what this seminar I know was about, is getting your name out there and your research out there in the national media landscape, right? So the more you have happening here on the left, so the more that pops up on Nevada Today, the more local earned media you have, that, Dr. Cushman has also his personal website and has, other places where he exists online. Perhaps you're on the university's social media, the more likely that a journalist at the national level is going to pick up your work or want to talk to you as an expert in the field. So this is kind of the goal. This is what your comms professionals are working towards doing. And there's a few ways to help you get started getting your name out there in that very busy media landscape so that you can establish yourself as an expert in your field and be someone that journalists reach out to. If you wanted to get a story on Nevada Today, this is one of the best ways to do that. So you can, or one of the ways that you can do that, on the Nevada Today site, there's this little submit a story spot here where you can go in and tell them, like, I have this new research that's publishing soon, or I'm an expert on this subject that's, in the news a lot lately and would be happy to talk to journalists about it, and submit your Nevada Today story here. Cabner also has a more direct route that's a little bit more specific. So save this URL as well, the unr.edu/Cabner/brand, where you can request public relations support, social media support, and figure out the best way to get your name out there. But I want to remind you all that, most, and I think everyone here is from Cabner, but if this is make it out wider, each of the college and units maybe has one, possibly two communications professionals, and then there's a central marketing team. So not everything that you submit in that, Nevada Today is going to get written just because of the availability of the communications professionals. So you're really, what I wanted to talk to you about next is just taking some of your own public relations into your own hands. You are experts in the field, and I promise you that journalists love to talk to scientists first over communications professionals. So you have a leg up to start. So own your expertise. Do not be scared to contact journalists. You can send them a story pitch or identify yourself as an expert on a topic that they report on. A reminder here to keep your communications officer in the loop. So keep Claudine in the loop so that you're not bombarding journalists with the same information in the same day. And we'll talk a little bit more about contacting journalists right after this. Another, easy way to get your name out there in the media landscape is to write op-eds for a publication that reports on your research. So it's on a science news publication, or even like, a local news publication if you wanted to start there. Often if you go to their contact pages, you can see if they accept op-eds, and many of them do. So that's a great place. And then the Ask the Professors on Nevada Today are another great place where you can kind of take some of the work off the plate of the comms professional. Those are Ask the Professors are where a question that, the general public might be asking about your field of study that you can answer is published in kind of a Q&A format. So you can really, write out your answers, and that can be published on Nevada Today. And those do really well in search. So they pop up often in Google when people are searching for some of those key terms. And then another thing, if you are going to reach out to journalists and you are working in the field, which I know many Cabner faculty are, take pictures. So, visuals that can go along with your story help out a lot. And even if you're not a phenomenal photographer, if you send a journalist some photos of the field site that you work at and have a pitch that they're interested in, they might end up sending out a professional photographer with you to do a feature. And I've heard many editors of science news publications talk about that being one of the best ways to pitch a visual story. Okay, so you want to take PR into your own hands. One of the things that you absolutely need to understand is what is and isn't newsworthy. Perhaps you've won an award, or you are speaking at a conference. Those are all really exciting things, but think about what a journalist is going to want to publish and what the general public is going to be interested in. So we're going to go through 4 things that are going to be that you can kind of check off your list and say, like, is this newsworthy? Should I reach out to a journalist about this? So anything that you pitch to a journalist, it absolutely must be intriguing. So a story should have one of these qualities. It should be surprising, counterintuitive, controversial, or unexplored. So this story in the New York Times is a home run of earned media by faculty member in the Department of Biology who published research about the California alligator lizard eating black widows and being immune to their venom. This story published in October of 2022, and kind of the creepy crawly time of year ahead of Halloween, and absolutely is just kind of intriguing story that caught the eye of a journalist and became a big story in the Times. And this is a home run because the entire story is about the researcher's work, which is really great. Here is a story in Nat Geo that where Dr. Cushman is an expert source that was used in this story. And you can see just in the headline, the surprising trick cacti use to survive the harshest climate. So even in the headline, you're seeing this, like, this is new information. This is something you haven't read before. So anything that's newsworthy, it absolutely must be timely. So a journalist needs to understand, why would I publish this now? Or why would I publish this, in a month? Like, what is valuable to readers about this? You're not going to publish a story about the snowpack in the Sierra in the middle of July, right? Even if your research publishes at that time, it's unlikely a journalist is going to want to pick that up unless you can find a way to tie it to, impending winter. So here's an example of an Ask the Professor that I hope you all have seen. What do food label dates really mean? And this was published as part of National Food Safety Month. So making sure that it was tied to something timely. And this is a great way to do this yourself in these Ask the Professors as well. Your story must be original. So make sure it's not something that has been written several different ways and has been covered by the journalist, especially that you're reaching out to. So Google your story idea, see how many times it's been written, see if there's, if it has been written about a lot, see if there's a new angle or a new perspective that you can add to it. And then finally, and I know that you all will be wonderful at this, it absolutely must be backed by fact. So here we have a publication that Dr. Cushman is an author on, and that leading directly to some earned media or some to a story that was put out there. So make sure that, let's say you get a really great grant and you want to have a journalist write a story about it. That might not yet, but the work hasn't really started or you haven't published yet. It might not be the right time to pitch that. That might be, you might want to put it out on social media that you got a great grant, but it's not yet newsworthy, right? So we've got these things. You want anything that you pitch to a journalist, it should be intriguing, it should be timely, it should be original, it should be backed by fact. There's probably a lot of other things that you want to get out there into this media landscape that don't fit these 4 characteristics, right? So like I said, the fact that you won an award is incredibly exciting, but is a journalist going to write that up in a story? It's pretty unlikely. Is the fact that you did receive a grant might be also really exciting, but is a journalist going to write that for the general public? It is unlikely. So those things that don't fit these 4 characteristics, they might be great for social media. They might be great for a college or departmental newsletter. There's also on that same page where you can submit a story idea to Nevada Today. If you just scroll down, there's this submit an announcement section, and you can submit, hey, I won this award and this is what it's about. You put in the information, and then that gets put up in the awards or announcement section of Nevada Today. And then it's out there in the media landscape. When perhaps a journalist or anyone Googles your name, that announcement is going to come up, but it is much less work for the comms professionals. And it's, when it's something that's not newsworthy, that doesn't need to go out to you as a press release or isn't going to be picked up by a journalist, this is a great place to put that information and get that information out there. So let's say you've gone through this checklist, you have some really great you've got a great newsworthy story, right? What do you do next? You're going to pitch it to a journalist, and then you've got to figure out how to nail this interview. So first, we're going to talk to you about pitching to a journalist. So before you reach out, know who you're pitching to. Do not just cast a wide net and hope for the best. So follow journalists and outlets that cover your field or research. Check out what they write about, read and try and understand their tone, make guesses at the audience they're trying to reach. Think about what they will want to write about, and what would they want to talk to you about. If you are pitching to a journalist, if you find a journalist you like who writes about your field and you have the story idea, please use search to find out if they've already written that story, and either pitch a new angle on it or don't pitch it and find a different journalist. And then, consider the newsworthiness, go through this again. Do not bombard journalists with story ideas that they absolutely aren't going to write about. Think of this as like relationship building. Once you establish yourself with a journalist, then it's very likely that they'll start reaching out to you regularly, right? Especially if they write on your field often. But if you're bombarding them with like, hey, I got this award, or hey, I have this small little thing that you're unlikely to write about, they're just going to, defer you to their junk folder. So make sure that you've got something timely, you've got a new exciting angle, and make sure you do your research before you pitch so that you're not pitching something that they've already written. All right, so you have a newsworthy idea, you pitch to a journalist, and now they want to talk to you. What do you got to do? So we're going to talk about interviewing a little bit. So before you interview with a journalist, you want to prepare as best you can. If a journalist reaches out to you, or even if you pitch to a journalist, you can absolutely ask what angle their take is on the story, or what angle they're coming at the story from. Understanding that, maybe your area of research that they want to talk to you is a small part of the story. Maybe they're coming at it with, you're the alternative view to a different perspective on the research, and understanding that is going to help you prepare for the interview. It'll help you understand what types of questions they're going to ask. You can ask also, what types of questions are you going to ask me? And that might help, but understanding the story angle will be really valuable. And then of course, understanding what type of interview it will be. Will this be an audio interview for radio or a podcast? Will it be written up in print? Will it be video that's edited so you're allowed to stumble, or will it be live and you've got to practice being really polished? Understanding where it's going to show up will help you prepare better. And so I wanted to bring this back up, and we've got these 7 sources who were quoted. Some of these folks, this is the only time that they were quoted in this long article, and you can see how short these quotes are, right? Often like 1 sentence, maybe 2 sentences. So as you're preparing for your interview, you really want to be able to give the journalists quotes that are usable. So talking in sound bites is really valuable. It can be really hard if you get asked a question about your research that, you might find that you ramble and you have to, kind of get through explaining it almost to yourself before you can synthesize it again. depending on the interview type that you're in, you can absolutely pause and say, to summarize and try and restate what you just said in 1 or 2 sentences. Don't let yourself get to the end of a ramble and be like, oh, well, I, biffed that question. Let yourself restate it. Take the time to do that. That's often the quote that the journalists will end up using. A really valuable tip is to prepare 2 or 3 key messages that you would like to get across during your interview. So if you know the angle that the journalist is going to take on this story, you can kind of guess at some of the questions they're going to ask or some of the topics that they're going to want to talk to you about. Prepare 2 to 3 key messages, and really internalize the core messages and practice stating them out loud a few different ways. I'd really encourage you to not, have a script and read directly from it. That can feel inauthentic. And I think a journalist can sense that. They want these kind of authentic, off-the-cuff quotes. Another tip that is used often in public relations is the pivot to a key message. And you hear this all the time from comms professionals, or politicians are fabulous at this. But even if you're not being asked a tough question, it's a really great way to just make sure you're getting in some killer quotes that a journalist can use. So if you get asked a question, answer it as briefly and directly as possible, and then you can pivot to your key message that you came up with. So answer the question, then what's important to remember though is X, Y, and Z. Or if they're asking questions about your research that just kind of feel off target because your research, then a pivot but really what excites me about my research is this, and it might help them re-guide their interview. So those are all of my tips or a few really quick tips for working with journalists, for getting your name out there in the media landscape. This was quick and dirty. This could be several sessions. Each slide could be its own session, but hopefully that gave you a few tips to get started. So I'm happy to answer any questions after this. I'd also like to plug, in addition to the course that I teach with John, I teach a 3-credit science and new media course in the spring, where we've had several graduate students, many from EECB, from chemistry, microbiology, and immunology, who've come in and taken the course, and we explore creative forms of science communication, and we also talk a lot about kind of owning your PR and understanding the media landscape. So expanding on this quite a bit, and it's been really valuable. So if you have any students that would be interested in that class, I'd love to have them. So I think
I'm chiming in, and I apologize that shortly after we started this, apparently my camera died. So that's why I'm a talking photo. So of all times, my computer has been about to die, and I believe that they ordered me one last month, but and I felt it getting really hot. So I think it fried the camera during this session. Anyway, so I'm sorry that I'm talking to you as a photo. But I want to thank John and Jen very much. I think this is a fabulous training. So we will get it ready for accessibility and captioning, and then it'll be posted on that Cavner brand website that you see there. And then we have another one coming for all of you folks who do publications, are primarily extension, but other stuff too. So Robert is going to be leading our next training on December 4th at 11 a.m. So if you care to tune into that, we've had a group that has been working on refining that system to make it much easier and much more automated, rather than like the old-fashioned way that we've been doing it since I've been here, since 1997. So hopefully it will be a lot easier next year to process our publications. I think that's all. I do want to thank you guys for attending. Any other questions, comments? No? All right, everyone. Thank you so much. We appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you. That was fantastic.
Thank you. Good.
You,
Guys, bye.
I.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.